I just started, volunteering. I went down to the mission and volunteered for 6 months because I didn't have a job for about 6 months. And I knew I needed to stay busy and find ways to just not be selfish and to do things for others. That was just sort of this internal switch that got flipped where I just knew that half the issues in my life were because it was always about me and I needed to start thinking about you a little bit more. And honestly, that's become the greatest secret in life is you serve people, you serve to earn, you serve. And that's the key to happiness.
This episode is for entertainment and information only. The opinions expressed are not professional advice, and listening does not create a client relationship. Always consult your own qualified professional before making any financial, legal, or health decisions. Hello, and welcome to the Healthy Wealth Experience. I am your host, Chris Hall, and today I have a good friend of mine on the podcast. His name is Chris Lamm. Chris, go ahead and say hello.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me on this morning, Chris. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Thanks for being here. So Chris and I have known each other for a really long time. Gosh, it's probably been like 30 years now, I'm thinking, probably right around there. And then Chris has been a mortgage broker for the last 25 years. He works nationwide, so he's not just in a small area. So I thought he'd have some really good insights into the housing market. But I want to talk to Chris about, the idea behind healthy wealth is like you can't be wealthy unless you're also healthy. Chris has done a really good job in his life of implementing coaching, implementing leadership, implementing health strategies. He's not just grinding out to get all the money in the world. He's trying to do it the right way. And that's why I wanted to have him on the show. So let's start out with this. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a mortgage broker.
Yeah, well, that's a long story, but I'll make it as short as possible.
We have an hour. You're good.
Okay, cool. That sounds good. I'll take all 59 minutes for this then. I grew up in Cottonwood, California, single parent household, lower middle class, and struggled a lot with school and just everything, and got into partying at a pretty young age. And when I was in high school, I was always decent at getting tests done and passing just by looking at notes the night before. But for me, just getting a C or a D was good enough. I didn't really want to break any records, and I wanted to play and hang out and do fun things. And what happened was my junior year, I was getting into some trouble. My partying was starting to turn into more of a lifestyle, but I was still holding it all together. And a friend of mine had said, hey, that there's a way that you can leave school at noon and go work till 5 and get school credits for it. And for me, that was killing two birds with one stone because number one, I could leave school. I didn't like it. And I had ADHD in a bad way, still do. Learned how to harness it, but just it was very difficult to sit in a formal classroom and to be there for an hour and focus. And so the other thing that was really valuable is I could make money. And so I could find a way to things that I wasn't able to do just because my mom only had so much. She was doing her best to take care of us. So I went down to a mortgage broker's office at the time. This was 2001. And I went in and I was a DJ at the time. I was DJing at electronic music festivals all over my mom didn't know half of this until later on, but I had friends that were DJs and I had turntables. And so we were traveling around the weekends, going to raves, at what they were called raves at the time, and having a blast. And so I had earrings and Tommy Hilfiger clothes, and walk into this broker's office. He said, okay, come back next week, take out your earrings and put on a collared shirt and I'll hire you. That was my job interview. So I was like, great, I got a job. Up until that point, I had worked restaurant, worked for a fencing company. I always worked in the summer, but never had a job during the school year. So went in, got the job, started answering in some of their paperwork when the phones weren't ringing, and just kind of learned the business. Now, at the time, the business was very different than it is today. This was 2001, 2002. And then finally, when I graduated, I stayed in the business. More on that later. But back then, there was a lot of loan products that were referred to as subprime. So this was, it wasn't nearly as hard to get a loan done back then because we always joke around and say that back then you could fog a mirror and get a mortgage with no money down and bad credit. And that was
two.
True.
You could get two with fogging a mirror.
You could get two. And you could probably borrow your closing costs and everything. So anyhow, graduated high school, stayed in the mortgage business. The partying lifestyle caught up with me. I was getting into trouble. I was finding myself really just completely addicted to drugs and alcohol. It started showing up where I couldn't keep a job and, just was having a lot of personal problems with my life. And I ended up getting sober in 2003, and that was really where things started to change for me, because I ended up going into a recovery program, and I started attending a small church in town, which is actually where I met you, Chris, was that church.
Yeah,
And I was just raw and real, and I was just like, hey, like, I've done everything bad and done it twice. Like, what do I do? And a lot of the people that came around me, I think looking back, they just never, they appreciated that vulnerability, and that someone was earnestly trying to change and was being honest about being a liar, cheat, and a thief, but wanted to do something different about it. So I just started, volunteering. I went down to the mission and volunteered for 6 months, because I didn't have a job for about 6 months, and I knew I needed to stay busy and find ways to just not be selfish and to do things for others. That was just sort of this internal switch that got flipped, where I just knew that half the issues in my life were because it was always about me, and I needed to start thinking about you a little bit more. And honestly, that's become the greatest secret in life, is you serve people, you serve to earn, you serve. And that's the key to happiness. I, up until early on in my sobriety, I, like so many other people, I just thought the key to happiness was money, fast cars, and girls, and fancy things. And I just learned that that's not true. Like, happiness is a byproduct of right living, and right living is usually the complete opposite of what the world tells us makes us happy. So got back into the mortgage business with a better foundation under me, sober, living my life better, telling the truth, showing up on time, cleaning up my messes. And then from there, it started kind of taking off. It's amazing how many doors open when you live your life honestly and vulnerably. A lot of people, they see a lot of risk in that. And a lot of people live their life very guarded, which I completely understand. But what I learned early on is, if you want to connect with people and if you want to open doors, like, if you can learn to just live authentically, which I get is hard to do, like, it's crazy the amount of opportunity that will come your way, whether that's employers, partners, clients. People want to be around people that are real. And so I wasn't trying to be real. I just had learned through the recovery, like, rigorous honesty and authenticity. And like, I told a story the other night that, I remember, like, correcting my behavior on the spot. I would be telling someone a fishing story, for example, and I would say, hey, I caught a fish. It was this big. And they'd say, really? I'd say, nah, it was this big. And they would laugh like I was joking, but I was actually learning to start trying to tell the truth in the small things, and so it just opened a ton of doors for me. I joined the mortgage bank at the, I started working with a guy at our church at the time, Eric Hyatt, because what I was doing, the regulations were starting to change, and refinances were kind of going away. This would have been the early 2000s, going into 05, 06, 07, when the foreclosure crisis started and all the subprime lenders closed down. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac got taken over by the federal government, massive stock crash, and what was eventually to become the Great Recession and the housing crisis that really, really hurt a lot of people. And so Eric at the time was running a mortgage brokerage, doing reverse mortgages, and he kept telling me, you should come do this. There's a real opportunity. And I did. And I stayed with him for several years. We did really well together. And all throughout that, we're going to China and Africa and doing missions trips, and I'm real involved in the church and in recovery and loving my life. And I was never motivated to make money. It was a means to an end for me at the time. And what happened for me was, when I met my wife around that time, I was also diagnosed with cancer. This would have been 2000, I think 2009. It was a crazy season for me, because we were going to get married, and then we had this cancer thing, went through all that, chemotherapy, all of that. And as soon as I got a clean bill of health, my wife and I were married probably 6 months at the time, I got a call from a bank that was looking for someone to run their mortgage division. And I took that role. And for some reason around that time, I don't know if it was this kind of provider thing kind of turning on, that now I have someone that depends on me, and, we're talking about family, or if it was just that the competitive side in me turned on. But I wanted to be successful, and I wanted, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it right, and I want to do it well. And, one of the things about the mortgage business, as well as lots of other businesses, is if there's not a lot of training on how to run it properly. And so you can go out and you can acquire clients, you can figure out how to put loans together, all these things. But the thing that's hard for so many people is how to scale it, how to have a team, and what telling them what to do, and how to do that in a way where you don't lose the personal touch with the clients. And at the time, I was doing pretty well, but I was working a ton of hours and my life was totally out of balance for the first time since I had gotten sober. And I really had a high value for trying to make sure I'm prioritizing the things that got me healthy: spirituality, taking care of my body, getting proper sleep. And now I've got a new wife and I don't want to mess this up. But I didn't know what to do because my phone, I had no boundaries, man. Like, I was taking calls 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. I was super competitive. I was looking up all my competitors online and seeing what they were doing. And I just was grinding my teeth. Like, I just want to beat everybody. I probably had a chip on my shoulder from being a kid. And I just wanted to crush everybody. And I knew that I could do it, but it was hard because it would have been at the expense of all these important things in my life, right? And I wasn't willing to pay that price. So I was literally at the point where if it would have required me to quit, I would have quit my job. And luckily for me, I got an email about a coaching program doing a call teaching systems and structure. And I got on that call. I realized there's a group out there that teaches guys like me how to do this and do it well. I went to a conference. I signed up immediately. And I've been with that coaching firm ever since. It's been, whatever it's been, 15, 16 years now. I became a coach for them 4 years ago. And, my business has continued to grow. We've gone on to break tons of records. We've been in the top 1%. I mean, at least 10 years now. We're doing loans all over the country now from Reading, and everything's by referral. And we have the best clients, and some of my clients become my best friends and things. Yeah. I mean, it hasn't been easy. There's been lots of challenges, but it's been a great experience and just a lot of opportunity to grow and learn. And it's been awesome. So, that's kind of the short story. There's obviously a lot to that. But I figured I'll come up for air because I might have talked longer than you expected me to.
No, that was great. That was great. The thing I wanted to point out just real quick is when he said new wife, he was talking about new wife back when he was first married.
Only
He's still have
wife.
the same
Yes.
wife now.
One and only wife. Although I feel like she, as you stay married for a long time, you always kind of have to reinvent the marriage. So
Absolutely.
it's like you are getting remarried 4 or 5 times because you kind of grow and become different people. And
Right.
so
That's good. That's good. That's actually really good
Yeah.
insight. And then I also wanted to kind of just go into more of the coaching thing. So, with the coaching side of it, I'm happy to announce it. It's called the Core, right? And it's specifically for mortgage lenders as well as real estate agents that they can get into the Core. And I've listened to a lot of the stuff. The guy who kind of is really big to Rick Ruby, he has his own podcast. I've listened to a bunch of his podcasts as well. And even though I'm not a mortgage professional, I'm not a real estate professional, I like the idea behind the systems. And I think that there are people in my industry that also do systems like that, but I don't know that there's anybody that in my industry that does a system as well as the Core does it for these people. So I've just noticed from my standpoint, I know you took on, a newer, not new, but a seasoned veteran, and she had the best year she's ever had before. And it was because she started using these core principles. So I would love to hear a little bit about what the principles are, the major core tenets of Core.
Yeah. So the Core, I mean, we are specific to lending and real estate, but the principles are universal. And that's why you are attracted to it, Chris, because I mean, you've listened to enough of Rick to know that he has coached financial planners individually, plumbers, professional sports athletes. He even helps Joey Logano, the NASCAR driver. I mean, what we teach people is very simple. It's prospecting, which is building and deepening relationships. It's the lifeblood of every business for the most part. If you need clients to create revenue, then you have to acquire new clients and have a steady flow of new clients, right? That's just the truth for most businesses, right? So prioritizing that and having systems and processes to do that right. And then building a team to cater to your clients, giving clients a white glove experience. We really believe in a lot of the principles in the book Raving Fans, which is know your perfect client, find more of them, and deliver +1 service. You just need be a little bit better than the average, and you'll do really well. And then the third principle, which is incredibly important, is manage your money well. not just from a personal standpoint, but from a business standpoint. And that is so critical because most people work a 30, 40-year career, and a lot of them become the best in their industry and their lane, but they're so immature and undereducated when it comes to managing their money simply because they haven't taken the time to really prioritize money management, wealth creation. And I see that all the time as a mortgage person, and it's understandable. It's hard, and a lot of people have grown up with, really bad money ideas, belief systems, and fear, and lots of emotions around it. So it's almost easier to just avoid looking at it for so many people. But in the core, we really focus on having a business that gives you the life that you want to live and making sure that you're doing the right thing with the money. And so the way we do that is we track everything. We do it. We're very data driven, and we have forms that we help people track leads and lead sources so that you can give credit where credit's due and you're taking care of your best people and the conversion of those leads. So you know where your best leads come from. That data's critically important. If you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. That's Marcus Lemonis says that all the time in that TV show, The Profit, which is an awesome show. He goes out and looks at businesses, and these are the things he looks at in every business. Like, how are they getting their clients? What's their conversion? What's their P&Ls look like? What's the staff and the culture look like? He doesn't even focus a whole lot on the product, because if you can get those things right, usually those are the biggest problems with most businesses. And when it comes to a team, like, we have a playbook on who to hire, how to hire, what to look for, what to avoid, SOPs and job descriptions and systems and processes, so that you can be, as the business owner, as the salesperson, involved in the money generating activities of your business most of the time, instead of getting pulled into the weeds and the things that aren't going to help you grow your business. You can get people to do those things so that you can continue to grow the business. And then finally, when this all starts working, your profit goes up, your revenue goes up, and we guarantee it. Like, I mean, I had several clients last semester, that one of them was up 150% year over year.
Yeah.
Many of them were up 50, 60% year over year. And we're talking about a year where there was 15% less transactions in 2025 than 2024. So if you just did what you did the year before, you're down 15%.
Mm-hmm.
So not only did they grow, anywhere from 40 to 150% for my best guy, but they also, they didn't feel the impact of less transactions. So when they start doing better, like, we're looking at their personal family budget, we're looking at their P&L, and we're helping them manage the money monthly. Every
Mm-hmm.
month, I have to turn in a personal family budget to Rick. I have to turn in my P&L, and he sees where every dollar in my household goes.
Mm.
And that's extreme accountability. But what I've learned in life, going all the way back to getting sober, is extreme accountability is the one thing that will take you where you want to go 10x faster.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary. I remember sending in my family budget the first few years. I always felt ashamed about it because it wasn't very good, but I just kept doing it, and it's changed everything. So we look at their budgets, and I look at their survival number, and I look at where they're spending money. Our goal is that they save 20% a month.
Yeah, see, now that's, to me as a financial advisor, that's a phenomenal target. And I feel like we live in an age where people are like, do everything you can to live like so well right now, and then like put away 3% because your company will match it, and then you're getting 6%. And it's like that was one of the tenets I hear over and over and over again, is put away 20%, 20%. And I think what it's doing, and talking to you and talking to other people who are doing it, is like, you're building a massive amount of wealth so fast because you're aggressively targeting that. And I feel like, when you talk about the systems and structures, I have this thing goes off in the back of my head that I feel like a lot of people consider those to be chains, right? Those are chains. They're holding you.
Limitations.
Yeah. But really it's actually, what I'm hearing from you and what I've seen is that it's actually very freeing to have those
Yes.
procedures and systems in place.
Yeah, it is. I have clients on a regular basis who will sit down with me and look at their mortgage payment on buying a house. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the common things they say is, I don't want to be house rich and cash poor. And so what I always say to them is, hey, I totally understand that. Let's take a look at a few things, okay? Do you do a personal family budget? And this is not to shame anybody, but most people say no. So I say, okay, I want you to go home and I want you to print out the last 2 months' bank statements. Are you using credit cards to pay bills to and to buy things? Yes. Print out your credit card statements. I want you to highlight every single thing that you paid for over the last 2 months that's non essential, meaning it's not your food, your gas, your housing expense, your insurance, your cell phones, etc. It's non essential. It's coffees, it's movies, it's subscriptions to all the different streaming services, Amazon purchases, whatever. Just highlight them. Don't think or try to judge it. Just do this. And I want you to write down how much that is. And so when people do that, what I tell them is this. I say, do those things actually make your family better and make you happier and make life better to live? And most of the time they say no.
Mhm.
I say, okay. So what do you think then would happen if you got a mortgage payment and instead of you buying half of that, I'm not saying you can need to eliminate all of it, but if you got rid of half of it, sometimes that's $500 that they just didn't even know was going out the door. I was like, and you got a mortgage payment. Like you said, cash rich and house poor, but you'd be better off with a forced savings of paying this mortgage and not spending all of this than you are right now. Do you see that?
Mm.
And then I always try to help them understand, like, what does rich and wealth mean? Because those things have different meanings to people. But you're absolutely right. I think the biggest thing that people have to understand is if they think that they're free, just spending their money however they want, whenever they want, they actually are very, very wrong about what being free looks like. What being free
Mhm.
looks like is that you can actually, if one of your spouses lost their job today, you would not be stressed out because you have 6 months worth of payments in a money market account and you could take your time and breathe and figure out what's next.
Mhm.
Where most people live paycheck to paycheck, right? The next level of that would be you've got 250 to 500,000 invested with Chris Hall, where like if something really bad happened, maybe you're not at your goal, but you have some significant runway. You are
Mhm.
not going to go broke. Like your family is not at risk. And so what I think is really important for people is that they begin to reframe what it looks like, because living on a budget is the opposite of limitations. It's actually the thing that makes you free. And being someone who's had a lot of nice things in my life and has ended up selling most of those things, I will tell you that having the things I dreamed of as a kid, they didn't make me any happier. And a lot of times they made me less happy
Mhm.
because I had more things that I had to pay insurance for, take care of, have bigger garages for, and they choked my life out. And the people that I know that are wealthy and happy, they're actually some of the most frugal people I know. And some of their hobbies are vegetable gardens and like raising chickens, and they're
Yeah.
like the simplest things. And so the journey through wealth is very interesting because you end up getting to this place where you realize that the best things in life are free, and that the very thing that the world has told us, which is having all the nicest things and going to the nicest places, is what makes you happy. It actually doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you happy. Like getting your time back makes you happy.
Yeah. Like we talked a little bit off the air about like New Year's and like, what do you do? And it's like, I stay home with my family and, I didn't go do anything. And it's like, I think that we live in a society where people just want to like always be doing something just to kind of like show up and show out a little bit. But then you get a little bit older and you realize like spending time with your family is like one of the most important, enjoyable things you can do.
Hmm.
Obviously, if you enjoy your family, but that's to me, that's kind of like where you start heading with this. Like once you get to a certain thing, you realize that wealth is defined differently. It's
Hmm.
not just about dollars and cents. It's literally about like what's your quality, how are your relationships, etc. Speaking of which, so let's talk about your workout. You have like a crew that you work out with. Tell me how that kind of came about.
Yeah, when I got sober, I was 230 pounds and I'm only 5'6", so I was a big boy, man. And I had never really worked out at all in my life. Unlike you, man. I tried out for football and it was not for me. I did not like hard physical things. But when I got sober, I immediately started going to the gym, and I've never stopped over the years working out. And I didn't ever do it because I wanted to lose weight. It was definitely part of the motivation. I did it because I wanted to feel good. Being a recovering drug addict and alcohol, I like to feel good. I still like to feel good. And
Mhm.
I just realized at one point when I did cardio hard, I felt so good afterwards. When I lifted weights, and then when you start seeing the results and your body starts changing, that feels really good. And so the challenge that for me is over the last 20 years of working out, I had big arms, but there was a lot of times you wouldn't really know it because I still ate pretty bad and I kind of ate whatever I wanted all the time. I am a foodie at heart. And
Same.
about 5 years ago, I got connected with this friend group that I run with now. Again, a lot of these guys were my clients, and some of these guys are pastors and businessmen, and we just started smoking cigars and hanging out together. And they're all pretty excellent guys that have the same values I have. And man, you've heard it before. Like the five people you run with, you're going to be the average of those. Like that is so true because one of our we went to a shooting school and one of our friends was a fitness coach. He owns a gym out in Phoenix, Arizona, actually Scottsdale, called The Hive. And he's a health coach. He's really well known. He's got the craziest, and he really inspired a friend of mine, Ahab, who was at the time about 150 pounds overweight, extremely obese and dealing with health issues, kidney issues. And Ahab, after that shooting school, lost 150 pounds and did a fitness competition. And it just really catalyzed for all of us. We're all at this age in our 40s where we need to learn how to get in our best shape. And so we started working out together, and we have a text thread where we share pictures, struggles, wins. And a couple guys started joining me in my workouts in the morning, which just, I've always known that when you bring people into what you're doing, you're going to do it more frequently just because you got people there that are going to show up. And so I always tell people that want to get in shape, like, either hire a personal trainer or invite a few friends into it. It will increase your chances of sticking it through it 10x. Yep. And then it's just a great time for us to hang out. In your 40s, when you have kids and a business and you're doing life, like there's not a lot of extra time. So you have to learn how to kind of blend your lives together with the things you're doing. And I think the Atomic Habits book, which I love, try to read it yearly, it calls it habit stacking, where you're stacking hanging out with friends with working out, and you're just trying to find what are the things I like to do, like into that. It's also a great way to do business, mixing the things you like to do with the people you want to do business with. So,
right. Like
so
a lot
yeah,
of
we've been
people like
working
to
out.
do golf. So that's where
Yeah.
they try to find a way to do business relationships and golf at the same time.
Yeah.
Smart.
Or poker. I
Yeah,
mean, it
poker.
can be, it could be anything, it just, but yeah, we've been working out together for, several years now. This time of year, a lot of those guys drop off because it's cold and dark in the morning, but I'm still showing up, and it's, I think it's the greatest competitive advantage that anyone could ever have in business is being in shape. Rick is a very difficult coach, as you know, because he is constantly telling people they're fat.
That I didn't know.
Yeah, like we could be like last time I seen him, and I'd lost 20 pounds in the last couple of years, and I put on a lot of muscle, and he grabbed my belly. He said, "You still got a ways to go." And that could sound really harsh, crude, or traumatizing to some, but for me, I like to be around. I feel like true friends will stab you in the front and they'll tell you the truth.
Really good.
They'll tell you the truth, man. Like, I don't think people are true friends unless they tell you the truth, at least for my definition. So yeah, just the environment and the ecosystem that you live in, the people you live around, the people you run with, it will shape your life for the better or for the worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And that now Rick is how old is he? Probably late 70s or early 70s,
Oh no,
somewhere in there.
He's like, I think he's 65.
Okay. Sorry, Rick. But no, he is very old school. Like he is very much like call it as I see it, not worried about hurting people's feelings. In his defense, he doesn't need me to defend him, but in his defense, he cares a lot about people. And he knows what works and he knows what doesn't work. And he doesn't want to like spend any time like coaching you on things that don't work. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's where he grabs your, belly and he does it. But he's actually, I think he probably loves you so much that he would do that for you.
100%, man. And I will tell you, the people that I've seen through the years who've had the greatest transformation in their business, they also had the greatest transformation in their health. Yeah. The people, if you look at the top 5 lenders or realtors in the core, they're also shredded.
Yeah.
And, Tony Robbins says success leaves clues. So does failure. And I've seen a lot of people who have had good months, even good years, but you can't have a good decade unless you take care of your body. I'm convinced. I have seen people have flashes in the pan years, but if they're not taking care of their body, they're not going to be able to sustain it. And they're certainly not going to have the stamina to put in 110% at work and then go home and still have the same energy to take care of their kids at home. And so fitness has to become more than just losing weight and vanity. It has to be because you want energy, you want mind clarity. It's just so powerful. You don't need to sleep as much when you're eating good, and you sleep harder. And when you wake up before your alarm and your mind is just in a different zone. And
Yeah.
so until people experience that, they don't really know what they're missing. But once they do, they're like, oh my gosh, this is the secret. This is
Yeah.
the greatest advantage to everything in life is working out, trying to eat good as much as possible, drinking water, trying to get enough sleep. Like, I mean, you see it in sports all the time. Like I was showing my boys some Kobe Bryant videos the other day and how hard he trained. And he was up at
Hmm.
4 o'clock before everybody else, shooting very basic shots. You know, he ate really good. He outworked everybody. And there's a video where he talks about like the hours that he put in that no one else put in, like 4 or 5 years down the road, like even if they wanted to catch up, they never could because
Hmm.
he simply did the work no one else would do. And that's the biggest thing that people have to realize when they fall into comparison or when they get envious when they see someone else's success. Like I tell people all the time that when I see they feel that way, it's like you have to understand that person is not better than you. They just did the things that you haven't done.
Right.
If you do
Or
what
chose
they
not
do,
to do. Yeah. Or chose not
exactly.
to do. So we
Or
all make
chose not to
choices.
do.
Yeah.
Exactly. If you really want what they have, then just do what they did, or
Right.
decide that you don't want to do that and be okay with who you are because they've made their choices to get what they have in life, right or wrong. But there's just no reason to compare if you actually knew what they did to get there, you know?
No, that's so good. Kind of like going back to the weight loss goes with success. I remember when I first started as a financial advisor, I was out door knocking and we did that back in the day. I don't think they do that anymore, but we did that back in the day. We would door knock and, it was hot and not wearing a suit and the whole thing. It's like I started growing my business so fast because of my work ethic inside the business was so good. I was working 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, half days on Saturdays. I mean, it was like the big treat for my family was if I opened a new account, I would take the kids to ice cream on Friday night. And so that was good because they were rooting for me to do it. And I noticed like after a year, I had probably achieved more success in that first year than probably, 95% of brand new advisors because I was like really paying attention to it. Well, then I just kind of like woke up one day and I was like, man, you are really overweight.
Hmm.
Like I'm always been a big guy, but I was really overweight. I thought, you know what? You're going to be 50, 55 years old. You're going to have a ton of money, but no, you're going to be like, limping. You're going to if you're alive at all, if you don't have a massive heart
Hmm.
attack. So I actually changed my system to working out in the morning and it was like, oh, but you go to work at 6 a.m. How do you do that? It's like, no, I'm going to cut some time out. So instead of getting at 6 a.m., I got in at like 8:30.
Hmm.
And what I found was I was actually way more productive. I was
Yes.
way more productive because like I felt good after just a couple of weeks of like eating better, working out,
Yep.
cardio, like all of a sudden I felt like, oh, I'm more clear-minded. I can like strategize better. And so I do believe that they're very interlocked. And I do think that, in my personal life, I try really hard with my diet and exercise. I'm not perfect by any means, but I really do think that's something I think the core is really onto. That's one of the things I'm really attracted to, like the way that you do your life. And I think that's that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is I wanted people to know that these things are hand in hand. They just are.
They are.
And so I appreciate you sharing that too. So let's talk a little bit about interest rates, housing market, stuff like that. First of all, you had mentioned you were in the top 1%. Give people out there an idea of like how much loans you guys did in 2025. What's the dollar volume on the amount of loans you guys did in 2025?
So I personally did about 75 million in 2025. Our
Okay.
branch probably did an extra, we probably hit somewhere over 100. I haven't checked the full numbers yet. The average lender does about 10 million a year, and a really good lender from the core's perspective, like you can't even come to our events unless you're 20 million. So a good lender by definition is about 20 million a year.
Good.
So yeah. So my team and I did 75. I say my team and I because it is a group effort. I could never do that on my own.
Mhm.
Although I do meet with all of my clients one-on-one. I have a really good team right now and we're growing
Right.
that. We're growing our team this year. So our company is a mid-size mortgage bank. We're based out of San Diego and I am a partner in the company and we did about $1 billion this year, which is small, just to give some perspective, like Rocket probably did 25 billion this year. Mid-size would be anywhere from like 1 to 4. When I started here 2 years ago, we were 300 million a year. So we've tripled in
Wow.
size, and we've added some really great partners nationwide. It's an awesome company, great people. Bryce, the owner, is a good friend of mine, and it's been hard, man, but it's been a lot of fun. We've had to do a lot of pivoting and adjusting and changing how we approach things for the last 3 years because of the higher rate environment and the market being the way it is. I really had to reinvent my business 3 years ago and change everything about how we did things. And we're still making some of those changes, but we feel like 2026 is going to be a really, really good year. And we feel like we've got some tailwinds instead of headwinds for the first time. And, it looks better for 2026 for home buyers and for transactions.
You see, you had to retool it, quite a bit. I noticed that like during this last 3 years, a lot of mortgage people really struggled, lost their houses, had to downsize their car, like really had to change their lifestyle. A lot of people exited. I'm sure you know the numbers on that. I don't know the numbers on it, but I know a lot of people who are mortgage brokers, mortgage lenders, they exited completely, tried to get into something else. Same thing happened in real estate. A lot of realtors are out. So like when you say you had to retool it, like it's not like you retooled it to be like the same as you were, right? You retooled it and you grew. So that's I think is really interesting is you're growing in a time when not everybody, but a lot of people are are shrinking.
Yep.
They're receding. So how do you kind of like correlate that? I mean, obviously you mentioned your team and your systems, but like, what do you think is probably the key indicator of why you continue to grow in a market that seems to be shrinking?
It all started with just going back to the basics. I truly believe that the essentials of being in a business where whether it's a financial planner, a realtor, or a mortgage lender, there's some very basic things that if you do them well, you will grow. And during the years 2018 through 2020, I got so busy that I got away from some of those things. And some of that was essential because we couldn't handle the amount of business we were getting. Did 550 units for roughly 140 million in 2020, and my branch did 1,000 units that year. And
Yeah.
it was, and we still couldn't take care of every client. So naturally, I was not involved with every client. And what I had to realize when rates went from 3 and 4% to 7 and 8% back in 2020, 2021 is really when inflation hit and the Fed started moving rates up, is I have to go back to the things that got me here, and which is relationships. And so I changed how I approached the business, and I just said, we're going to focus on getting better, not bigger. Every business is always focused on getting bigger. And if we just focus on getting better, having a better experience, me showing up and giving really good value to the people that I meet with, not only do I enjoy that more, even if the revenue is lower, but it's really the right way to grow. So we changed our process. We fixed our CRM. It was a mess. We started looking at the data and understanding who our best referral sources were, and that we had gotten out of relationship with a lot of the people that took care of us really well over the years. And I started asking for really hard feedback from some of those people. And then I just started taking that feedback and making it right, and finding ways to make sure that I was doing the things that I did. And as I started doing that, I started getting back involved with meeting with my clients on Zoom or in person, not just over the phone. And when I meet with clients, it goes great because I have so much value to offer them because of all my experience, whether that be investing in real estate, buying Airbnbs, taxation, tax benefits, building wealth. That's what most people are really trying to do when they buy a house, but they don't know that. They just think they're here to get a pre-approval letter to go write an offer. So when you can approach it from a place of actually really trying to help them with their money, you win. And same with my business partners, realtors, builders, financial planners, CPA. If I can try to help them in their business with their money, then I will add more value than anybody else in my field can add to them because I have more experience than 99% of people with those things. Take you, for example. You're a financial planner. So like there's 4 things that I could do to help you, or a combination of the 4. And depending on where you're at in your career, 1 or 2 of these things might be more important. And here's what they are. Number 1, you're going to want a reciprocal business. You want me to refer you people that need to make investments and need a good financial planner. And I've done that, right? Number 2, you need introductions to big relationships that I have that you don't have. People that could become big accounts to you, that could refer you people that need to invest their money. I know a lot of people you don't know. And if I can connect you with those people, that would help your business, right? Number 3, as you grow your business, you probably need to hire a team. And I've hired a couple hundred people over the years, and I've made tons of
Wow.
mistakes, and I've got really good things on hiring and disc testing and ways to retain people over time, so you don't have people coming in and going out, because it's really hard to keep good people. You always hear that from business people. There's a lot of ways that you can retain people, even in California, just by taking interest in their lives. And there's strategies to do that. So if I could help you with your team, building your team, hiring your team, keeping your team, that's really valuable for a guy like you. Uh, Co-marketing, say you want to do an event and we're doing business back and forth, and you don't have to take all the cost on, and I throw some money to help you throw an event. That's something I can do for you. And
Hmm.
so when I take that approach with referral partners and business partners, you're adding value. And when you add value, you deepen the relationship and you set yourself above the competition, because you're giving someone way more than they would ever expect. And I try to approach my clients that way, and I try to approach my business partners that way. The other thing that we did is we realized California is one of the most unaffordable states in the nation. There are places in the Midwest, Florida, Texas, that people can still buy a home with $60,000 a year income. I needed to get licensed in every state, and I needed
Hmm.
to be able to have relationships out of my market. So we worked really hard on that, and we're doing 35% now out of state, and all by referral. So you can build relationships everywhere now. It's crazy. The pandemic, if there's one good thing that came out of it, is it made the world a lot smaller because
Hmm.
of Zoom and people willing to work with people anywhere else.
Right.
Redding's still a very affordable place where I live, so we do a lot here and we do a lot in California. But growing out of state has been key. And so, yeah, I would say those were the main things that we've done, and we're still working on doing a lot of those things. Diversifying loan products was really big. We're doing a lot of business purpose stuff now. Investor loans, Airbnb loans, stuff for people with really complicated tax returns that get denied by banks but are good borrowers. We have portfolio loans we can do for them, even a little bit of commercial stuff we've been doing. So broadening our product offering has been really key to being able to solve unique problems for the clients we have. And so those are the things that we've done, and it's worked, but it's been a ton of hard work, changing things and moving back into some of these basics. But we're on the other side of it now, and it's going well.
For those of the out there that have never heard of a portfolio loan, why don't you kind of give a little bit more on that? Because I think that's something that is a valuable product for you guys, and I think people don't even know exists. So give us a little bit more information on that.
Yeah, so 98% of all mortgages for residential real estate in America are sold to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. Okay, so whether you go down to your local community bank, your depository bank, you talk to a mortgage broker or a mortgage banker, they're going to sell that loan to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. They have very specific guidelines on how to qualify, and it's a lot. But there are tons of people that don't fit in that box, but they are good borrowers. They either just started a business and they don't have a 2-year tax return history, so they got a startup, or they take a ton of deductions and write-offs that are completely legal, but Fannie and Freddie penalize them for it. And so they've been dealing in all cash. Foreign nationals that have green cards, but the way they make money is hard to prove on tax returns. There are portfolio loans available now where you can work around a lot of those things with a very common sense approach and still buy a house. I do it all the time. I started doing this about 10 years ago, and it's become a really big part of what we do. So business owners, entrepreneurs, gig workers, the rates on those are comparable. They're not much less, or they're not much more than a conventional loan, but getting through them and getting closed is so much easier. I mean, I'll tell you a couple stories. I had a guy referred to me up in Seattle. He runs a Toro company. He's
Oh yeah.
Ukrainian, and he's here he's got some special status with his green card. A lot of lenders said we can't do it because of your citizenship. And then the other lenders said, you've only done this Turo business for 1 year. You've made 400 grand, but you've got to have a 2-year history. And so he had a lot of different things. We found a loan, and he bought a great $1 million property with a shop to park all his cars for Turo right by the airport, and he's killing it, and he was super happy. We had a guy just closed 2 days ago down in the Bay Area who's had an auto mechanic shop for 30 years. He does all the police cars, but he writes everything off, and he has like 10 properties paid off, but he's always dealt in cash and never thought he could get a loan. And he closed 3 days ago on a new house, and he couldn't believe it, and he was so happy because we found an alternative way to look at common sense. This is a very good borrower. This guy is, in many cases, these guys they're less of a risk than some first time buyers who can get
Right.
loans with no money down. So the regulations are challenging because it's not intentional, but they end up kind of pushing some people out that are actually really good borrowers. And we found a way to help those people.
That's awesome. I think
Yeah.
that is so necessary. From my standpoint as a business owner, for the longest time I was a W-2 wage earner for a firm. And then when I started my own firm, the first thing I did was, incorporate, go to S corporation. And when you do that, you can make the same amount of money, but keep a lot more of it because the
Yes.
government allows you to do deductions. I talk all the time on this program and to anybody who will listen. And I tell people, if you can get away from a W-2 job into a 1099 job or some sort of like, independent consultant or whatever your side gig, basically I'm saying is like your side gig needs to be not a W-2. And if you can get into that, like you can create some significant wealth over and above your W-2 job. Well, the problem is that, we now get a bunch of write-offs that we never got as well, because you don't get write-offs for W-2 jobs. You get them for business owning. And that's the way the whole system is set up. And then you turn around and you go, hey, I want a loan. And they go, well, you don't make any money on paper. You're like, okay, look at it. I mean, I make this much money and I pay all my bills. And so I think that is such a clever, needed type of a thing out there for people to have, especially like for people like myself, like I'm actually working right now on my tax planning certificate. I'm getting a certification in tax planning as well, because I think it really goes hand in hand with what we do for financial advising. It's always about like how much money can I save you in taxes as well. So I'm working on that. But
That's
my point is
huge.
like, yeah, it's like it's so important to like I always say like you need to pay the government what they're due, right? But we don't want to tip them. Right. We don't want, like, how they always flip the screen around now and they say, hey, what kind of tip do you want to give me? Like, we don't want to tip the government. They're obviously, I mean, now more than ever, we can see they're not being very good with our money. So I want to pay the most amount of taxes that I have to and not a single cent more. And so I think that you're going to do that, but then you're going to turn around and say, hey, I want a loan. And then the average broker, the average loan company is going to be like, hey, we don't want that. So these portfolio loans, that's why I wanted to dive into that a little bit more, because I really do truly think that people are not aware that those exist, and they're not aware that guys like you do business in all 50 states and can do those. Props to you for finding that and filling that gap.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I just think that the taxation piece that you touch on is so important. I'm also doing a ton of tax education right now. And again, it just helps us help our clients so much more, because most CPAs, they want to sign your return, but they don't want to take any extra risk, which means they're not going to bring you strategy and ideas. But the truth is there are a ton of ways that you can get creative and take legal deductions, even on a W-2, believe it or not. A lot of people just believe that if you have a W-2, there's nothing you can do. That is so not true. And a lot of CPAs, they're not going to bring you these ideas because it creates more work for them. It creates higher risk for them. But I'm the same as you. If I can defend this and it's legal, I'm going to do it if it makes sense.
Mhm.
And that's the way we should approach our taxes. Like, we're not talking about committing fraud here. We're talking about if there's a legal, creative way to take deductions, even if it increases risk of an audit, if you can defend it, you should do it.
Yeah. So to go with that, the tax code now is like 6,000 pages. It's ridiculous. The tax code is like 6,000 pages. Like 30 of those pages, 30 are about what you should pay in taxes. The other 5,700 and 5,970 pages are all about how to pay less in taxes. The tax code is generated to get people to pay less in taxes. It's just, once again, people don't want to do it because they don't want to like commit fraud, like you said. But that's like, no, you're just doing what's available to you. And the other thing is again, going back to it, here in this town, CPAs, I have several good relationships with CPAs. But you're right. They don't want to do tax planning. They want to do tax preparation. And so guys like me and you have to pick up that slack. We have to get people to know where they're at. That's why I primarily work with business owners now, because like my skill set as an investment advisor is one thing. My skill set as a marketing guy is another thing. My skill set as a business coach is another thing. And then now I'm adding tax planning, right? Or you can just go to a financial advisor, or you could go to me, and they're going to cost you roughly the same. So like, why wouldn't you go to me? That's kind of how I feel about it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So as far as the housing market goes, we have talked about a little bit about interest rates. Interest rates are a little bit lower than they were.
Oh, they're quite a bit lower.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I know this changes daily. So it's like, whatever we say today, by the time this even, publishes, it might be completely different. But just give us an idea on what the average person's going to pay, like on a 30-year mortgage.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Rocket Mortgage today was at a 6.5. I mean, you're looking 6 to 6.5 range today on a lot of loan programs. Might even be able to get a hair lower depending on the loan type that someone's doing. They were over 7 not long ago. The housing market is starting to heat up. And we believe that in the spring, it's gonna heat up quite a bit. A lot of National Association of Realtors, Mortgage Bankers Association, they all predict about a 4 to 5% appreciation
Mm.
in 2026, which is, it barely appreciated in 2025. The rates are the biggest motivator to that because it takes the average payment $300 to $700 down from where it was 6 months ago. Plus, sellers are a lot more willing to make deals right now. That's not going to last forever, and there's a lot of people that have been calling a housing crash with these higher rates, and it hasn't. Now, real estate is local. There's areas that have seen price reductions that have resulted in lower median prices, like Florida, parts of Texas.
Yeah,
Um,
Austin,
Calif-
Texas. Yep.
Austin got hammered, but California has been surprisingly very, very, very stubborn with values, and a lot of that just has to do with inventory. We have more population than homes being built, and that just continues to be the trend. Even with people leaving California, there's still not enough housing to support the population here, and
Mhm.
when you have less supply than you do demand, it controls prices.
Right.
If the cost to buy a house goes down because rates go down, more people step into the market. It puts more upward pressure on assets like real estate. And we definitely think that's the narrative for 2026. That values will get pushed and
Yeah.
people will enter the market, and it will be a much hotter market than we've seen for a couple years.
Well, and I think that, what you bring to light there is that, it's usually goes down to supply and demand, right? So, and like I just briefly mentioned Austin, Texas, their real estate market is down quite a bit, but you have to look at the growth of the market over the last 10 years as well.
Yep.
So it's receding from these like really all-time highs. And whereas California, we have a lot of people who are leaving the state, but we still have people who are moving here. We have, realistically speaking, we have a lot of houses that burn down. We have a lot of people who are turning their houses or their rentals into short-term rentals, Airbnbs, VRBOs, et cetera, so that those folks, like, those houses are no longer, quote unquote housing. You know what I mean? Those are hotels. They're so like, if you converted 20% of California into Airbnbs or VRBOs, which I know that number is ridiculously high. Let's just call it 10%. Let's just say 10% of these, over the last 10 years have become VRBOs or Airbnbs or stuff like that. Like, that's a massive drain from the people who can get a house. Like, it takes away a lot of their supply, especially since those homes a lot of times aren't really high end things. They're usually like entry level homes. They're usually like mid grade homes, or maybe they have a nice location on them or something like that. But that's a house that someone could have lived in or rented, and now it's not that way. So that does take inventory as well, and I think that's important for people to know that, especially in places like California, where a lot of people are trying to get into short term rentals.
Yeah, and we don't have the construction here.
Yeah.
The other issue with Austin is they had a ton of new construction. Millions of homes got built in Texas because their regulations to build are so much easier and cheaper than California. California, we hardly have any new construction here. Very,
Well, I
very
mean,
little.
yeah, like even locally, if you want to like just break dirt in Redding, California, you're going to have to pay the city of Redding about 50 grand
Yeah.
just to break dirt. And I mean, those costs are horrendous. Like, if you talk about building a 2,000 square foot house, $25 a square foot to just get a permit. And again, like, that's not the case. I have buddies who live in Texas, and he walked in with a plan to build a pretty large shed. You could call it even like a small garage or whatever. He walked to the planner and put it, was like, "Hey, I want to do this." And the guy goes, "So what are you doing here?" He's like, "Why don't I need to get a permit for it?" He's like, "No, go build it. Get out of here." And like, he
Yeah.
literally like didn't have to even get a permit because it was like an
Yep.
outbuilding structure.
Yeah, there's also the cost of labor and materials are because of all the taxes in California, the gas
Yeah.
tax. I
Yep.
mean, our fuel costs here, it makes everything cost more. So there's just a lot of things in California that have been contributors to our housing market being the way it is. It's the crash isn't coming that people had hoped for. And I understand why people want to see a crash because they want to see affordability come back. Like, trust me, like, if there was anyone that wanted that more, it would be me. But it's just not going to happen. And unfortunately, a lot of people are priced out of buying real estate. And the only way that they're going to be able to enter the market is if they raise their income.
Right. Right. Which goes back to, again, like one of my tenets, which is like, I really do believe in side income. I really do believe that If you're at home listening right now and you make 60 to 80 grand, but you have some time, like think about how much time you spend on, Instagram and TikTok and things like that. And then say, like, what if I were to pour like just an hour a day when I get home, kids go to bed, everybody's sitting there, you know what I mean? Like, what if I just poured myself, a beverage. I'm not a drinker either, so I don't know how to say this. But anyway, you just pour yourself a beverage and you worked on that business for an hour. Like, what would that look like after a month, 2 months, 6 months? And it's like, I think that's probably part of the reason that we're having issues is because people, the job market, the like, hey, I'm going to pay you $20 an hour. That doesn't meet expectations if you want to own a home. But like in the past, like you could make $20 an hour, and if your spouse made $20 an hour, then you could probably buy a small home. That's probably not going to be the case now. And so if you're making $20 an hour or $30 an hour or whatever, then you need to turn around and go like, how do I make more money? And yeah, you might just switch jobs and that'll work. But that's why I'm a huge fan of the side hustle stuff. I really think that like people don't understand like how much they have to offer that people are willing to pay for. And I think the millennials and the Gen Zs have done such a great job of monetizing knowledge. These are people who like, they're life coaches charging people $1,000 a month and they're like 27. Like how are you life coaching people? You haven't even had a life yet, but they've got the structure, the systems and the drive. And I think that's really cool stuff. Going back to real quickly with the housing market, you did mention that you thought it would go between 4% and 5% this year. Is that more nationwide, or do you think that's California, or is that regional based? Where do you think that
that's
lies?
that's a nationwide trend that NAR put out. I think Zillow and Redfin have a very similar prediction to that. So that is nationwide. So obviously that could vary, state to state, market to market. But I definitely think that is true for Northern California. I definitely can see it. And if you were to look at any graph of the median sales price for any area, it always drops between October and February. And people think there's a housing crash because the median sale price pulls back 10%. But that's a very normal thing. But then what you see is a very big spike from late February through the end of August, which is when most of the homes get sold and the demand kind of steps in during the good weather. So you always have to look at a year over year basis. So 4 to 5% is very, very realistic that we could see that here in Shasta County next year, especially if rates continue to stay low and go a little bit lower. People want to buy homes, and there's a lot of people that are starting to become okay with the idea of giving up their 3% mortgage on the house they have and will put their home on the market and buy another house. I mean, we're seeing more of those locked in people starting to just say, you know what, the 3% and 4% I have, yeah, it's great, but we've been waiting for 2 years. Our kids are growing. We just need to bite the bullet.
Right.
Buy another home. So I think that's going to be a part of it. Is there's a lot of people that will finally list and buy their next house. And so, yeah, we think next year is going to be the first year since rates went up where things are going to be heading in a better direction. And it's probably going to be a slow market for several years to come. But I think 2026 will be a good opportunity. The last thing I'll say on housing is this: it doesn't matter what market you're in. There are always opportunities to buy right, to make a good investment, and to make money on real estate. Every market, there's always those opportunities. So no matter what the market's doing, you want to make sure you're working with true professionals and you educate yourself on how to make the best possible decision with whatever the rules of the game are at the time. And there are still a ton of ways to do that. We see people winning in real estate all the time right now, but it does take it's a little more challenging than it was, when rates are 2% and 3%, but it's still very possible.
Well, and I also, kind of going back to something you talked about earlier, I also think the portfolio loan is something that would really help a lot of people get to this next stage. Maybe they don't even want to get rid of the house with a 3% mortgage, but they want another house and they want to turn that one into a rental. But it's like, man, it's like 6%, 600%. And I don't make any money on paper and I have this other mortgage. And it's like, you know what? That's why it's important to just talk to a professional and not assume that you know what you're talking about. We all get our information from a lot of places, but like when it comes down to like anything that we talk about, Chris with mortgages, me with financial investments, when I talk to people who are, estate attorneys, like all those kinds of things, like go to the source. Like those people, like we really legitimately spend hours and hours and hours into this stuff. We're not just watching like 2-minute clips on Instagram and trying to figure out that we got it right, like Alex Hormozzi or something. We're trying to like really be experts in what we're doing. So go find an expert and get into that. and ask them for what they're trying to do and tell them what you want to accomplish and let them be a partner for you. That's what I would say. Speaking of that, Chris, what's a good way to get a hold of you for people that want to do business with you? They want to like learn more about portfolio loans or just traditional housing loans is fine too. But like, how do they get a hold of you? What's the easiest way to do that?
They could always search my name. I'm everywhere online. I get a lot of clients through Instagram. It's Chris Lamm with 2 M's, or they could just shoot us an email and I can give you all of that to put in the notes.
Yeah, we'll put it all. We'll put that, the website, etc. Whatever you want, we'll put it all in the show notes for people to get a hold of you. I appreciate your time. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Do you have anything that you'd like to say before we sign off?
No, man. It was a great conversation. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Happy New Year to you and your family. And to all of you out there listening, I'm going to make the plug. You know what I mean? Share this with your friends. Like it, comment, do all the things. Let's let the people out there know that this is a good show and we're bringing interesting topics and we're bringing interesting guests. And by doing those small things, you let the algorithm know that you want to hear more of it. That helps us. It helps us get new and better guests. It's very much like, hey, buy in to what we're doing here. And I promise you'll be really happy with the results. We had a great 2025. I'm really looking forward to 2026. So thank you all for listening. Thank you so much, Chris, for being on the show. And everybody, have a great New Year.